BHP South Flank is predominantly going to be an autonomous mine site. That's what they're aiming for. So you'll have your technical people that will still be required on site, and you'll have some form of operations type personnel, but you're definitely not going to have the number of crews that you would have had, say, 8, 10, 12, 15 years ago as far as operating mobile equipment. Now, in saying that, I've got a girlfriend who's a heavy-duty diesel fitter. When Rio first started looking at the whole autonomous truck type thing, she, obviously they had to retrofit some of their trucks. Now, that costs tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. But then where they're spending money on technology, they're saving money on salaries, I suppose. So, obviously it is beneficial to the mining company for that, and not only just purely for a money cost saving exercise, but obviously safety as well. How many times do you hear that a tire's caught fire and all of a sudden someone's going to have to jump out of the cab or whatever it might be? No matter what, in any industry, we're going to all have to sort of adjust to technology.
Hello and welcome to the Beers with a Miner podcast, episode number 47. This is a happy hour episode. My name is Mad Mumsy and I have been driving the huge dump trucks in Australian open cut mines for over 10 years now. I wish I had $1 for everyone who said to me, "How does a little thing like you drive those big trucks? Oh, you must be rich. How do I get a job doing that?" My mining friends are asked these questions all the time too. And this is what started the Mad Mumsy journey to share stories and tips from living a mining lifestyle and to let others know what it's really like. Tune in each episode as I sit down for a relaxed chat, usually over a few beers with a fellow miner. Women and blokes with various experience, roles and opinions share their lessons and stories with you. Because not everyone is cut out to be a miner. Why not? What does it take to thrive and survive in this industry? Now, let's dig in. Get it? Dig? Mining? I crack me up. And after 47 episodes, I'm still doing it. Crazier and crazier. This week, I chat with Dani Tamati, Principal of the Resources Hub, an award-winning, high-profile recruitment, career development, human resources and OHS professional, keynote speaker and, as you'll hear, much, much more. She has been involved in the mining industry for the past 24 years as a FIFO worker, FIFO wife and a service provider. In this episode, Dani shares with us her personal story of working FIFO. How did she first get a start and what are her recommendations for newbies? Maybe that's you or someone that you know. What was it like as a woman working with mining blokes for the first time? How does FIFO living compare to being a townie in small mining towns in Western Australia? And what was it like to start a family in those small towns? Why were people knocking on Dani's door? Random strangers. Listen in. This is a great chat and I'm sure that you will get a lot out of it. It's all very intriguing, but I was keen to get Dani onto the podcast, mostly initially to chat about her views on autonomous machines and her thoughts on how that will affect the workforce in the future. Quite a few mine sites and large companies, mainly large companies at the moment, are now starting to roll out autonomous pits. So they have robots, if you like, trucks. And we talk about Mad Mumsy's vacuum cleaner robot, Robbie. Oh, I love Robbie. He's high maintenance, though. I've still got to look after him. Spoiler alert, I won't tell you too much about that. But if you listen in, you'll hear Dani's thoughts on that and what, as people working in the industry right now and people thinking about coming into the industry, how she thinks as a recruitment officer, labour hire guru, contractor, how it will affect workers and what we can do about it. Because it's coming. It's happening right now. So it's going to be more and more. So what roles can be undertaken to help you still thrive and survive in the industry, even with robots running the show. On another note, we also glossed over, because of a time factor, and we did discuss this at the start, but Dani lost a past partner to suicide, and he was a FIFO worker. We chose not to cover this in this episode because she has spoken about it in depth in a 2-part episode that I will share in the show notes link, which can be found at madmumsy.com/beers4747. And you can listen into Dani talking about losing her ex-partner to suicide, and also the importance of support and mental health, not only for the employee but for their families as well. I bring this up because I want you to be aware of this being part of her why, I guess, about her passion to make it work for all of us, families and workers, and now being someone who helps employees to thrive and survive in our industry. So are you ready? Let's dig in. Get it? Dig mining. I cracked me up. I'm sure I said that earlier, but bonus, you get it twice. And welcome to the podcast, Dani Tamati. So good that finally we get to catch up after all this time talking online.
I know, it has been a while, hasn't it?
It has, for sure. Now, listeners to my podcast know that I usually start off with, and sometimes I forget and we go and add it on at the end because we jumped straight into the episode. But as the podcast is called Beers with a Minor, I like my guests to share what their favourite beverage is, and especially their most favourite time to enjoy it. What is yours?
Okay, so mine's probably a New Zealand Sauv Blanc, and right about now is a really good time to be drinking it. But I quite enjoy a wine or two, let's just say, and I'm a little bit of a wine snob when it comes to my Sauv Blancs. So yeah, that would be my fave.
Okay, and that's white, isn't it? That's a white one. Yeah, so you can tell I'm a beer drinker. I'm getting a lot better.
It's all good. It's funny, I've never drunk beer really. I maybe one day a year I might just want a swig of something, but it's not something that I've ever sort of done.
Which is strange because I know a little bit of your mining story, which we'll delve into now, and you've spent a lot of time out in the desert in WA. And there's a lot of beer drunk out there, I'd think.
There was a lot of beer sold in my first career too, let me tell you.
Okay, so would you like to jump in and start off with what you have done in the mining industry? What are your roles and how your journey has unfolded?
So I was really, really fortunate, Leanne, because I actually worked at a 5-star hotel in Perth, and we used to have some guys that would come down from up north. Their roster at the time was 13 weeks on, 3 weeks off. And one of them, as a bit of a joke, I was about to turn 21 and I said to him, oh, look, if ever there's a job in mining, can you let me know? And he said, yep, absolutely. So literally I planned to the 21st, as I think we all used to back then. And about a week and a half after I turned 21, I was on a plane to Port Hedland and then in a car for 2 hours with 6 burly mining boys to go out to a mine site, which was about 250 k's out of Port Hedland. And I sort of, that was what started it all. So my roster was the same as everybody else's. So 13 weeks away, 3 weeks home. And I did that.
Sorry, I'm a little bit of an interrupter because I just have to say 13 weeks. My mum and my sister did 6 weeks on and 1 off, and I was horrified about that. But 13, how? And what were you doing? Was that working at the bar
Yeah, so my first job was actually working in the wet mess. And I tell you, I used to take more money over that bar than I did in the 5-star hotel that I worked at. With the beers about a third of the price. There was only about 120 people on site at the time. Yeah, it was a really introduction, I suppose, really. Although I had I suppose, really, when I think about it now, I had an intro to mining because my mum used to live in a little town called Leonora in the goldfields. So I did used to go up there for school holidays and bits and pieces and hang out with some friends of ours before Mum took over the motel. But my first real role in mining originally was exactly that.
So on that, at that wet mess, which some of my people who listen wouldn't know that that's what it's called, a wet mess. Yeah. Like, what's that? That's the bar, right? And did they have a limit there on how much people could drink, or were they allowed to take takeaways?
It was an absolute free for all. It was, yeah, basically, gone. Well, it wasn't even considered. OHS wasn't even a consideration back there. We're talking 25 years ago, out in the middle of the desert. 1,800 kilometres from Perth. So yeah, originally when I was there, it wasn't a consideration. But I know that they sort of towards the end of my time there, they were starting to realise that their workforce was probably rocking up and wasn't that productive given the night before.
And did they have drug tests on site or breathos or anything back then, or only if really bad shit went down?
Yeah, no, they were only just starting to implement them. They were talking about it sort of as I left. Some positions had a lot of staff turnover, like the mill rats, as we used to call them, and some of the underground bogger operators and, truckies and that sort of thing. But most of the people, the technical people, stayed there. It was a bit of a training ground for a lot of the geos and the mining engineers and that sort of thing. So it was a really interesting, I suppose, intro. And that's kind of what, that red dirt got in my veins, and it was there to stay. So after that, I met an underground air leg miner at the time, and we were together for 3 years. We looked at going to Kambalda and Kalgoorlie and going residential and bits and pieces, but he remained FIFO. And then we separated. He unfortunately passed away. And then I went back up north, and that's when I was 13 weeks away, 1 week home, but I was in a residential town this time, which was a lot different to working just on a mine site. So I had access to, medical facilities, and the airport was 2 hours away. We had a site plane, so it was a lot different to working at Bamboo Creek. But yeah, and that's when I met my husband, and that's when we sort of got together, and then I went out on a lot of roles out on the site.
So living in a mining town as opposed to a camp. So was it did you have a house or like a unit, or, because I know mining towns, just because you're in a mining town doesn't mean that you're in a house necessarily.
No, that's right. And well, when my hubby and I met, we were both contractors. So I had my little unit, and he had just a room in a shared quarters originally. And then when we got together, not long after we got together, he got a real job. He was no longer a contractor and got the the company shirt. So then we were entitled to a house. So we got given a little duplex, which was the cutest little thing. Like, they decked it all out and retiled it and recarpeted it, and new blinds and everything. And it was quite funny because just before we moved in, we found out that we were pregnant with our first child. So it kind of happened at the right time. And we lived there for quite a while, actually. I think Jake was about 16 months old. And then we moved into a house, a really nice house, not very far from one of the contracts that I was doing. So I used to work in town office, which looked after all the houses and site plan manifests and bits and pieces. And then I'd also work out on site across different areas like drill and blast and mobile equipment and mobile ops and admin reception. I also used to do work for the GM, occasionally step in and, help out there. So yeah, I got some really interesting experience. And during that time, actually Jake was he was tiny. I got offered a job to be a recruiter for the same temping company that I was temping for. And they said, look, we know you've got a young family, you've got Jake, and we love the fact that you work out on site, but do you want to do recruiting as well? Because we really need somebody in town that can oversee all the guys and girls that are out on site, make sure they're getting paid properly, make sure that they're being looked after, liaise with, the superintendents and supervisors. And so I grabbed it with both hands because it meant that I could still work out on site in some casual admin roles, but then I could also sort of start my career in recruitment and have Jake as well, so look after him.
That's a really good win-win, isn't it? Because you can still be working on your little career, but not little, but the seed is what I'm thinking, like the start of a career that obviously we now know has just exploded, which we'll come to. And still be able to be the mum and do a lot of it from home, and you're still getting grown-up conversation, not just with your little 16-month-old as well. So that's a really good. How awesome is that? That doesn't happen very often, I wouldn't think.
We're talking 18 and a half, 19 years ago when working from home wasn't even a consideration. But I think given the fact that we were so remote, my main consulting, so the actual branch that I reported through to was 200 kilometres away. So they really did need a presence in town, and they had the forethought to think, well, she's already temping for us. She knows what we're like. She's reliable. Yes, we know that she's got a child and her husband works for the company. I'm not going anywhere. So it was a real win-win situation for everyone. So I used to throw Jake in the back of the car and go to the site plane and pick up the guys and take them for a tiki tour around town and make sure they knew where to catch the bus and here's your key, and do the inductions from my house and bits and pieces, and then I'd also manage them from there. So it was kind of, it's not your average recruitment role by any stretch of the imagination, but it suited the purpose of where we were at and what we were doing and what they needed, I suppose, as a company as well, to have that presence in town. The unfortunate thing was, yeah, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, and especially having someone that you really knew how it worked out there, and you knew the people and they related to you, because I can tell already that you're lovable, one of those nice people. And so they'd be like, oh, yeah, just see Dani, she'll sort you out, So to have someone like that in town, is awesome.
I used to get people just rocking up to my door sometimes and knocking on the door and saying, hi, I'm here to get a job. And I'd go, right. And my husband would go, hun, really? And I go, well, I'm known as that person because I was that person in town. At that stage, we probably had maybe 600 to 700 people, including obviously the mine workers and their partners. And a lot of the partners worked out on the mine or had, other roles like at school or in town at the supermarket or deli or whatever. And then obviously kids, because we had a primary school in town too. So it was a perfect, gorgeous little community to raise a family. By that stage, I was heavily pregnant with number 2, and unfortunately this particular company lost the contract, and the new company the new company didn't feel that it was viable to have a recruitment consultant in town, which was fine. So I toddled off and had our second son, Tane. So Jake, my 19-year-old, is currently doing a Boilermaker apprenticeship at a fabulous company in Perth. And Tane's now 16. Today's just done his second last day of work experience as a carpenter. So he wants an apprenticeship at the end of this year when he's 17 and got a license. So he was due, and I had him, and within 6 weeks, from breastfeeding mother and all, I was asked to go back out to site to fill in for some admin roles because they didn't have anyone in town that knew the systems and how to manage it. So I had to sign myself up with the new company to go and do the admin role to cover up on that. So this mine site was a good 20 plus Ks away from home. So a lady who lived in town who had 5 children of her own, and she was the swimming teacher at the time. She was the nanny through the day, so she'd have the boys at home, and I'd jump on the bus at 6:30 and come back home at sort of 4 o'clock and take over where she left off, sort of thing. And so during that time, that sort of, I think I was out there for 3 to 5 weeks or something. I can't quite remember now. It's so long ago. But the other company had realised that, yes, they did need a presence in town. Yes, I was the person that had already, had that contact with the people. So then I got offered to do it all over again with them. So I just kind of picked up where I left off a little bit. But, it was not the same support, I suppose, from what I'd had previously with Drake, and it was just a little bit. It was almost like they felt pressured into having me to a certain extent as a recruiter in town, but that was based on the superintendents and supervisors not getting satisfaction out of having to report through to a Karratha branch when they don't know the ins and outs of what's going on, in town and obviously on site.
So is that when you started thinking, because you've been doing this for a couple of different people now and in different ways, did you start thinking about ways, if I was going to do it, I'd do it like this, if this was all me? Is this where we'll mention it now, the Resources Hub? I'll have shared it in the intro, but that is your baby, your business, and where you do so much for the employees and also to support FIFO, and we'll go into that. But is this is around the time that it was born, around number between 1 and 2? Baby, real baby?
Because I've got 4. No, it wasn't
4.
Yeah, it wasn't even a consideration then, really. I mean, I was pretty lucky that I had autonomy to a certain extent because of, I suppose, where we lived at the time. But really, my husband's career started to take off and I wanted to support him in that. So he started life as a chef. When I met him, I like to remind him that he was a busted-ass contractor that drove a truck.
Hey, nothing wrong with driving a truck, mate.
I know, darling, I know. Oh, look, that was the reason. It's funny because when I first signed up to work for Drake, I wanted to be a haul pack operator, and I got my license, went for the medical and everything, and that's when I found out I was pregnant. And so they were like, "Bah, that's actually not going to happen, but hey, we can put you in an admin role." So I never got to drive that truck.
And do you ever still think, well, you probably wouldn't now, I guess, but do you ever still yearn to drive a big truck?
Probably not. No, I do.
Because you've heard what it's really like, I guess, from a lot of people.
Well, I do. Yeah, I do, and I have. It was funny. We had an excavator at our property not last week, the week before, and the excavator operator jumped out and he goes, "You really want to get in and drive it, don't you?" And I go, "No, maybe just to have a go." But no, I suppose Jake coming along changed everything. Changed the supposed
life.
Career pathway that I was going to take, life, exactly. But through that, Ricky, my husband, he got into emergency services and ERT comps and bits and pieces, and he thrived and he absolutely loved it. So from being a chef and then doing town crew in Pannawonica, which was where we were living, and then driving trucks as a contractor. Then he got on to working for Robe River at the time, which was bought out by Rio back in 2000, 99, 2000. Oh, it must have been 2000 actually. And then he went into fixed plant and started learning loader ops and all that sort of stuff. But during that time was when he really enjoyed ERT. So he kind of, I don't know, his career pathway was sort of set on that, in that direction, and I really wanted to support him in that. So he used to go away for comps and bits and pieces, and a position came up in Panawanika for an emergency services officer at the time, and he went for it. And unfortunately, he missed out, and a fitter from the MEM got it. And he was really quite devastated because, you know, he really, really wanted this opportunity. We were quite happy in Pana, although by that stage I was still doing recruitment to a certain extent, but I was doing a lot more admin at the mine, but only as a contractor. I never sort of got the road job. And then we just decided that the kids, you know, by this stage Tane was sort of nearly 1, that it was time for us to move. So when a position came up in Paraburdoo, which was about 5 hours from Pana, and it was owned by Hammersley Iron then, he applied for it and he got it. There was actually an employment freeze on for about a good 9 months leading up to that. And we were the 7th family in 2002 to move into Paraburdoo, and we didn't move in until sort of September. So, they hadn't employed anyone, but he got this job as an ESO or EM, or it was Emergency Management Officer, and then his career just went AWOL from there. So we moved and, thoroughly enjoyed it. So again, we moved because now we had an airport right there, you know, a bigger shopping centre. We could have a pool in our backyard, things that we weren't sort of
nice.
Panawanika was a closed town, whereas Paraburdoo was right where the mine site was, but was an open town.
So you could wash off all that red dust.
And I had a fence that you couldn't see through, because in Pana you could see through everyone's backyards. You could see what everyone was doing. But in Paraburdoo it was completely different. So, so we moved into Para, and it was a little bit, I suppose, cliquey to start off with, as any kind of mining town is. But we were fortunate that we knew a few people in town that had come across from Pana as well, or that we'd met in our mining journey so far. And then I found it really hard to get back to work. I couldn't find, even getting a contract in admin out on site was really difficult. So I did a lot of different things, and then we had our daughter in 2004, Sienna.
Oh,
so she's
a girl.
Finally. Thinking that we were finished at that stage, but not quite. So Ricky, you know, continued in his career and did really, really well. And then we found out not very long after that, I took a job with Integrated Group, which is now program maintenance. But that was, so I had Sienna, and then I continued working out sort of contracts out on site and then some around town. But there was no way that I could get back into recruitment, because Skilled pretty much had it sewn up and there was already people that were in that position. So, Sienna was born, and then soon after I found out I was pregnant with Kale. So there's only 16 months difference between the two of them. So I had him. And by the time he was 14 months, again, I was still a contractor. Like, through each and every pregnancy, I've always been a contractor. So unfortunately never got maternity leave or any of those joys. But when he was 14 months, a girlfriend of mine was working at Yandy, and some guy had breezed in and said, we want to set up an office in Paraburdoo. You don't know anybody who's been in recruitment, do you? And she goes, my girlfriend. She's got 4 kids, but hang on, let me give her a call. And I was just ready and raring to sink my teeth into something, you know, that was tangible and I suppose consistent. So the next thing, I was being interviewed. I was being flown to Perth for interviews down there, and I set up the Integrated Group branch. So I had 4 kids under the age of 8, I think, at that stage.
Oh,
and,
gosh.
And away we went. So, they were a fabulous company to work for. I had such an awesome team, and I'm still friends with a lot of the people that I worked with. So we had a mining hub in Perth, and then obviously I looked after the guys and girls on site and in town.
Yep.
And I did that for about 18 months, I suppose. And then another recruitment consultancy tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, do you want to work from home? We've got this great opportunity. You'd be area manager Northwest. And if you move to Perth, because that was sort of starting to become apparent that we'd want to go to Perth at some stage because our kids were going to go to high school, sort of within the next few years, then your job will move with you. Unfortunately, it didn't. But that was I suppose, cemented the idea around having my own consultancy. And then, so in 2010 we moved to Perth, and then I worked for a mining contract services company as their group HR and recruitment manager, and I loved that. That was a great job, and it was a beautiful bunch of people to work with. And it was good because it meant that I'd be placing people in underground roles and open cut roles, which was good because I hadn't sort of been in the underground space for quite some time because we'd worked in iron ore for those 14 years. Ricky took a role in the city, so he transferred, and he was also flying to sites sort of on and off throughout the different weeks, bits and pieces, but it wasn't a set roster. And then, so I took MyMax Group, and then it was about to be sold, and I could sort of see that the writing was on the wall as far as my position was concerned. So I started looking for something else, and I got offered a role as state manager practically for a mining and resources division of an international recruitment company, but I had to set it up. So that was really when the Resources Hub was born, because even though I'd always been tempted to sort of go out on my own, I don't know, I think the security of working for a company where you've got branding and marketing teams, and you've got people that write your tenders, and you've got, a group of people that you can handball all your jobs off to, and admin and mobilisation and all that sort of stuff, sounded like it was pretty perfect. But unfortunately, I had 5 general managers in a space of 6 months, and I'm thinking, shit, we're in the business of people being for people, and this isn't actually what I signed up for. So the Resources Hub and another business of mine, which is kind of just sitting there in the wings at the moment, called Resourceful Women, was born, and I registered them. I think I was actually, if I'm honest, Leanne, I think I was actually going through that, oh my God, I'm about to turn 40, shit's getting real here. So
what am I doing with my life?
Yeah, and plus I wasn't seeing my kids. My husband had just gone FIFO with BHP, so he was with Rio for 14 years, and then he got tapped on the shoulder to set up emergency services at a brand new site up in the Pilbara. And we'd never considered really being a FIFO family, because we'd always lived residential. And then when we came to Perth, he pretty much worked in the city. So when he was offered that job, we sort of sat down with the kids and said, what do you think? And he's been FIFO with BHP now for, it's coming up 6 years, and he absolutely loves it. But
so does he have a roster? How long is he away for?
He's on an 8 and 6, which is pretty perfect.
Is that days?
Yeah. And then
that's pretty good.
Yeah, and recently he was doing 8 days on, 6 days off, and then 4 days on, 3 days off. But they canned the 4 and 3, so now he's back to 8 and 6.
Yeah. And how are you finding that? Or how are you finding it after all those years of being together all the time, and then him being away?
Well, initially it took the kids along. It did take them a bit to get used to. And the problem was that we both started our new careers on exactly the same day. It was the 2nd of July in 2012. And I remember saying to him vividly, honey, this is either going to make or break us, or one of us is going to have to leave. Like I didn't think that, because I was travelling to Melbourne and Sydney and Brisbane a lot of the time as well. He was on an 8 and actually he worked in the city originally, setting systems up and bits and pieces, but then went 8 and 6 after a few months. So it was a really interesting time. Plus we were living in a shed on our property and building our dream home. So, 4 kids living in a shed, the FIFO husband, and me, going left, right and centre was an interesting time. But having worked for this particular company, it really sort of made me realize that when I do recruitment, it's not just a transactional body for money type setup, whereas it is for a lot of these large agencies. And I actually do give a flying about my candidates and, you know, where they see their career pathways. And that's really where the Resources Hub was born, I think.
Right. So, and that's why you care so much, because you've
I
seen
think
how go on.
No, I think it's just really important. You know, I think it's a bit like, you know, when we first came down from up north, I'd speak to these mums and, you know, I was one of those working mums, career mums that always worked. Yes, I've had nannies for my kids, you know, throughout their life. And yes, they have gone to daycare. It suited two of them. It didn't suit the other two. So nannies sort of fitted in our little world whenever I needed care. But there were a lot of women that I met when we first came down, and we live in a beautiful hills community where, you know, we're so fortunate here because we all look out for each other. But there were so many of these mums just going, oh, you know, I had to give up my career because I had kids. And I think that's really sad. Like, my grandmother's 91, and if anyone taught me about being a career woman, it's that woman, because, you know, she got dressed up and she went to work Monday to Friday in the city at Perth Photographics for 38 years or however long it was. You know, so it was, for me, it was really important to be able to have my own career, but also have children that are functional, that see that their parents are striving to make life better for everybody. And when Ricky and I met, we had absolutely nothing. We had a car, we had the same CD collection, I think, pretty much. You know, a CD player, a TV, and a video recorder back in the day, and that's what we started with. We had nothing. So yeah, I've always been the type of person that I've needed to work, because if I've ever wanted anything throughout my life, I've needed to have the money to be able to afford it. Even as a young, you know, I started working, I think, when I was 10, delivering newspapers.
Oh, you're a goer. I can tell.
I wanted to push back, and my mum said, okay, no worries. Well, you can buy half. And I went, okay, fair call. So I went and got a job. And so I've always worked, you know, and I would find it really difficult not to work. But when, you know, when the whole sort of Adecco thing happened, I just realised that there was a particular niche in our industry in particular, and also for women to want to return to the workforce and understand what that looks like. Everybody at some stage kind of needs support, and I'm a big believer that no one stays in their career for all of their life. Well, not everybody does. Like I said, my husband was a chef and now he's an emergency management specialist with 2 sites that he looks after. I started life in hospitality, and now I'm a careers coach and recruiter and do some HR and OHS on the side as well. So I think diversity and diversifying your career can sometimes be a benefit, obviously, because you've got skills that you can offer to certain roles that are over and above what anybody else can. But also, you know, you spend a bloody long time being at work. You may as well be happy. So if you're not happy in your career, then you need to find an alternative.
I was going to say, my listeners know that's my motto. If you got to be here, you might as well figure out how to have fun while you're here, or do something, like plan for it. You're going to be sitting at 12 hours. What are you going to do while you're sitting in there? Have a plan. Do something. Come up with something.
That's exactly it.
Now for a word from our sponsor, Julia Hartman and the Bantax Accounting Group. Julia's my awesome accountant. She's written 2 books with financial expert Noel Whittaker, and she's got a passion to help us miners make the most out of our hard-earned cash. She's got heaps of tips and make sure that we get every cent we are meant to get, and is right on the ball with everything. If you head to bantax.com.au/miners, that's BANTACS, you can download a free booklet all just for us miners. And there's also a spreadsheet in there that helps you check off what tools you have for your trade, like your isolation lock, work boots, 7 shirts, all of these sorts of things, and you can weigh them up and it'll tell you if you qualify weight-wise to claim your trips out to work. And that's just one of the things that they've got over there. So I strongly urge you to head to bantax.com.au/miners and see what they can do and find your nearest office as we come up to tax time. They're really on the ball, know what's going on with the tax department, and there's heaps of other free information like property investing. If you really plan on doing some great things with your money, you want to do that, right? If you want to sell your house, can save a lot of money if you find out what to do first rather than in hindsight. And Julia, she'll, make sure you get it right. And if you do it wrong and then go and see her, she'll up you in the nicest possible way, because she really cares about us and wants us to keep our money and not give it to the tax department. Anyway, head over to bantax.com.au/miners and tell them Mad Mumsy sent you. Touching on not staying in the same career all the time, technology changes as well. Like over those years, like things weren't even invented. And then as you stay in your one little role in that company, you can see new things that you might be able to move into, or that I wouldn't mind having a crack at that. And so that's what you advise people to do. Once you get in, have a look around, see what else is available.
I think about how fortunate I were in Panawanika and Parabadoo as well. Him in particular, there was always an opportunity to upskill. There was always, he got his emergency management degree while he was being paid through Rio Tinto. And our youngest, Kale, at the time was 10 days old when he started that. He was working full time. He was studying time. We had 4 kids under the age of 7. I still wanted my career. So, there was a lot going on. We lived 1,400 kilometres away from any of our family. Yes, we had friends, and your friends become your family when you live in towns like that. But for me, and you're right, with the whole technology thing moving in the direction that it is, I think people need to be really clear on having some idea about what they think they want to do. But how are there I've got an assessment tool that helps people with this kind of thing, but how suited are they to the types of roles that they're applying for? And you see it all the time when you hear these young kids that go to university and they may be doing sort of chemical engineering, then all of a sudden 6 months in they go, oh my God, what am I doing, sort of thing. So really having a true understanding around what the types of duties and responsibilities are for roles, and is there shift work involved? How are you going to going from day shift to night shift? How are you going to go sitting in a truck for 13 hours? Because that's a bloody long time to be sitting by yourself, moving dirt around a pit. So, and I'm just using that as an example, but I suppose for me, thanks. I suppose for me, going from recruitment and then looking at it from a different angle and wanting to help people understand what career pathways they're suited to and how I could assist with that. That's sort of really where the Resources Hub was born, because for me, recruitment, like I said, isn't just transactional. It's got to be a win-win situation. It's a marriage between the candidate and the client, because at the end of the day, that means that my job's been done right, really.
Yeah, that's right. Now, I want to be mindful of your time. So that's probably a good segue, as we were talking about technology and stuff there. I really want to bring up, I want to hear your thoughts on the autonomous, I say trucks, but it's not just trucks, there's drills, there's everything. The autonomy of our industry, of mining, but especially people that are thinking about, I want to be, what do you call it, a haul pack operator. Over here we say, a dump truck, because that's a brand of a truck, I believe, a haul pack. Whereas, so there's different ways, different states as well. WA people, they're a bit different over
Yeah, we're a bit out there.
Yeah, it's all right. My sister's been there forever. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on what sort of roles would be available for that? My partner's a fitter. He's underground. He's a real miner. Just ask him; he'll tell you. But he said that they're still going to break, so they'll always need fixing. So,
Oh, couldn't agree more. So, I bang on about this all the time. Autonomous vehicles moving forward, I suppose it had to happen. And when it was first bandied around several years ago, even the whole operating a mine site from a remote operations centre in Perth, when all these sites are in the Pilbara, like that was pretty foreign back then. But hey, it works and they're all doing it, Rio and BHP and Roy Hill and
even over here, a lot of them are doing it now, yeah.
yeah. But as far as trucks are concerned, do I think it's a good idea? Oh, well, yes, obviously there's jobs that aren't created because there's, fewer dump truck operators or haul pack operators that are needed. But then in saying that, how are they going to be able to move that technology into other types of mobile plant like loaders and graders and dozers? Well, they're probably not going to be able to. So there is still opportunity to operate and drive the big the big gear. It just means don't throw your money at getting a dump truck certificate, because really you're just throwing your money at a wall. So, look at alternatives. And even though we're talking mining, when we're talking brand new mines, and yesterday I went to the Kalgoorlie Boulder Growing KB conference, and there's 687 exploration sites in WA alone. So those sites are going to start off as a construction site before they move to a production site. So there's opportunity for people to be able to operate trucks and again, loaders and graders and excavators and whatever other ancillary equipment that's needed, water carts and bits and pieces, but in a construction setting as opposed to a mining setting. And I think sometimes mining has been somewhat glorified for operators, but civil works is, that's a bloody speciality in itself. So if that's really where you're dead keen to start your career, then maybe look at civils as opposed to mining, because you're going to be getting experience. It's just not going to be on the big gear.
So the autonomous trucks, or the whole system, because they basically set up, from the way it's operating at the moment, from how I believe, is they have a whole separate little pit, or not necessarily little, I suppose, but they have a separate area that no one else goes into, and they're all robots. That's how I see them. I got a robot vacuum cleaner, and I think, one day that could be in my truck, Do you know how expensive that is compared? Obviously, it must be cheaper, otherwise they wouldn't be doing it.
It's absolutely cheaper.
With smaller, I'm just thinking out loud here, but I'm thinking a smaller mine that like a startup, they might not start up in that phase. They might get older trucks that don't have the technology, so they'll still be probably for another good decade or two.
Yeah. Look,
there's operator roles.
Yeah, that's right. But I think, I know that BHP South Flank is predominantly going to be an autonomous mine site. That's what they're aiming for. So you'll have your technical people that will still be required on site, and you'll have some form of operations type personnel, but you're definitely not going to have the number of crews that you would have had, say, 8, 10, 12, 15 years ago as far as operating mobile equipment. Now, in saying that, I've got a girlfriend who's a heavy-duty diesel fitter, and she was, when Rio first started looking at the whole autonomous truck type thing, she, obviously they had to retrofit some of their trucks. Now, that costs tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. But then where they're spending money on technology, they're saving money on salaries, I suppose. So, obviously it is beneficial to the mining company for that, and not only just purely for a money cost saving exercise, but obviously safety as well. How many times do you hear that a tyre's caught fire and all of a sudden someone's going to have to jump out of the cab or whatever it might be. So I think, I think that no matter what, in any industry, we're going to all have to sort of adjust to technology
and evolve.
Exactly.
Even in my little humble podcasting, it's just every week, every month, there's something new that's coming. Oh, there's a new rabbit hole to go down. I might do that. Oh, I might go there. But if that's your career, that's, if you look at your career like that, what else could I do as well, And like, I love what you said before about trying to be happy about it, and then that helps so much better with our mental health, because there's so many issues with the FIFO side of things and FIFO suicides and all the inquiries, and even just people who are just grumpy at work, they might not actually have gone right down, but they're not happy. They don't want to be there. They think they got to win the lotto to get out.
Yeah, that's right. And look, mining, it's known as the golden handcuffs, but it doesn't have to be like that. And I think as an industry, we have a lot to answer for sometimes, because I know that when Ricky and I started, we were really fortunate that we had friends who had done really well in mining and had set themselves up and had kind of guided us to do the same. Because like I said, we started with nothing and we had a child very soon after we got together and, grew our family from there. But for these kids, when I say kids, they're not necessarily kids. I mean, I run a workshop on getting into FIFO a few weeks ago, and I've got another 2 coming up this Monday in Perth. And I had a demographic of between 23 and about 56 in the room, So it's interesting that people, and especially guys, I'm finding at the moment, I've got a lot of clients that are coming to me saying, Dani, I should have done that mechanical trade that my father told me about, when I was sort of 18. Yeah. Now I'm 40, but I want to get into mining, what's good for me? And so it really, my whole consultative process, I suppose, like I've said several times in this podcast, is really around, okay, who are you as an individual? What is your skill set? What are the types of roles you think you want to do? Now let's drill down from there. And it's looking at, it's opening people's eyes to, don't just think you want to be a dump truck operator. You might want to go and work in a lab. You might want to go and, I don't know, there's so many different bloody opportunities in mining. Just don't think of it as just driving a big truck, because that's not the be all and end all of life for everybody. It's a bloody good start. And like I said, it's where my husband started really, and where I plan to start, but my life took a bit of a different route. So that's okay. It is what it is. But but I think people having to understand, it's a bit like, the redundancy whole scenario in the last few years too, like that so many people were so out of sorts for so long because they'd always worked for the same company in the same positions, or they'd climbed the corporate ladder internally, so they didn't know how to apply for jobs. They didn't know what LinkedIn looked like. They didn't, all they heard about was Seek. They didn't know that there's Indeed and Jura and Adzuna and all these other avenues and social media for finding work. But the other thing was too that they had to get used to the fact that they weren't going to get paid holidays, that they were probably going to be a casual or a fixed term contractor or on labour hire. And guess what? That's a whole new conversation right there. Because even tonight, on the way home, we were listening to a radio segment, and they were talking about how people are finding it so difficult at the moment to get loans because so many people do not have permanent roles. I personally don't think that permanent roles are here to stay. I think that mining in particular will look at different workforce planning options, like the gig economy, like consultants coming in for specific projects. There will be a core group of permanent employees to do what's needed to be done from a workforce perspective. But I think that as we evolve as an industry, there will be other options. And I think some people in the last sort of 4 to 5 years have jumped on the bandwagon, and now that they realise that they still can be paid well enough that they can have time off if they want to go under their own consulting banner and they're comfortable with that, we're seeing like a bit of a slight turn. So it suits some people, it doesn't suit others. Like I said, I've been a contractor for pretty much my entire life. So for me, going and doing a contract for a certain amount of time suited me at the time, but now I've got my little baby and it's starting to get busy. But yeah,
that's the thing. The thing now is with the contracting and the labour hire is, like you say, they were short-term contracts, but now these are just like the never-ending bloody story. It's 3-4 years people contracting. There's no shirts being offered, and in Queensland, sorry, I'm going to get on my little high horse here. I'll be mindful of your time because people know my thoughts on this, but we've just had a labour hire inquiry here in Queensland.
I know.
I'm sure you're all Yeah, I made a submission. Our crew, we all wrote little bits down here. Add this, add that, And there's so many things. It's not just that you could get put off. Right now, you could get a phone call and say your services are no longer required, and that's it. You're gone. No holidays, no sickies. So people are coming to work sick because they've got no sickies and they need their money, and there's just so many things, like you say, about the banks. There's no paternal leave, maternity leave, for your partners, and so it's just nothing. If you're not at work, you're not getting paid. And we could just say, we don't want you anymore. And you feel like you're on edge all the time.
I know, and I feel really sorry for those people that have been on labour hire for a lengthy time. I mean, my business does offer labour hire, but it's usually short term. It's no more than 6 months, and most of the time it's 3 months, and they transition into permanent employees with my clients anyhow. So it's more so the client dictates that for sort of, who these people are, whether or not they're suited to our business. And then if they are suited to our business, which I think that most people that I put out in front of my clients would be, then they want to transition them into permanent employment. But, it also works for individuals as well. Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, but over here anyway, the big mining companies, most of them just are not putting on any permanents. Doesn't matter how good you are or who you are. And like where I have been recently, this one time at this one band camp, they had they hired 2 people per crew in the last 2 years. That's it, and they were digger drivers. Everyone else, no. Oh, and they keep dangling the little carrot. Oh, well, yeah, we'll probably be putting some on soon because it's starting to get a bit cutthroat as the price of coal's going up again. So people are looking for the experienced operators, but they're putting on trainees, which is good. A lot of trainees are coming on board, but then they can't always hack it, so they don't stay. And anyway.
Yeah, and I suppose that's what I try and do from the Resources Hub perspective is mitigate the risk of a bad hire through any element, whether it's the individual or it's the company. So, I attended this event. There's 1,000 jobs in Kalgoorlie right now. Now, I love Kalgoorlie. Would I move there? No, my husband wouldn't allow it. But, and I wanted to move to Kalgoorlie at one stage when we were in Panawanika. But, right now, and I just said to one of my clients and a guy that I actually managed to find work for as well, he just rang me up on the way home tonight, and I said to him, look, if you and his girlfriend Tash are serious, move to Kalgoorlie. There's a perfectly good opportunity. Rents are cheap. There's 1,000 to 2,000 jobs in town right now. You're only 6 hours away from Perth. Vibrant little community. They're spending so much money on it. It's brilliant, to the point now I'm looking at setting up, well, I have been for a while actually, for a good 4 or 5 months, setting up a hub in Kalgoorlie because I can just see the benefit for so many people and obviously for us to be able to find people work in that region.
So what sort of jobs are available in Cal? Because you see a lot of dump truck operators. You must be residential. You see those advertised every now and then. But what else is happening around Cal?
So the conversation yesterday was there's going to be a lithium company, well, a company that's going to be setting up a lithium refinery in Kalgoorlie. Now, other companies are shipping all their ore and their lithium and stuff to, ports and additional refineries that are in Perth, which is an additional cost, clearly. And it means that the jobs are down here, not so much up there. Retail is still really buoyant in Kalgoorlie, apparently. So the partners of guys and girls that go up there can possibly get work in retail. There is traineeships through BHP at Nickel West they were talking about yesterday. So trainees in sort of the mid fixed plant areas. There's so much drilling work available because exploration's starting to really go stupid up here, or in WA in particular. So there's, opportunities for trainee drillers, trainee offsiders. Two of my clients in the last month, career clients that I work with, helping them to sort of understand what career pathways and help them with CVs and LinkedIns and bits and pieces. Both of those, one guy came from the army. He's in Queensland. He got a trained driller's role after working with me. And another guy was a bricklayer with his own team, and he just wanted to start saving some money because he's sick and tired of chasing invoices and finding work. But he's the same. I caught up with him on Friday last week. I bumped into him at the pub, as you do, in the hills.
As you do.
Because he's a hills boy. And, I think his third swing into a 2-on-1 and loving it so far. And he got a job as a driller's operator, and they want to put him through courses already, and he's only been there for 5 seconds. So opportunities are abound. I think you just need to, do your homework and really understand what it is you think you want to do and work out whether or not it is suited to you, or speak to the right people, who can help you on that pathway.
Yep. Like yourself. So, you mentioned earlier about an assessment tool link. I'd like to share that with my peeps, please.
Okay, so that's on my website. So a few years ago, again, having the whole idea of a bit of a holistic niche hub for the industry, I discovered a tool called Harrison Assessments, and it works for both companies and individuals. So with individuals, like my second eldest son, Tane, when he was 14, he was diagnosed with dyslexia, dyscalculia and inattentive ADHD, which meant that his career's choices, there would be some kind of limitations around that look like. So I ran him through the career navigation system and got him, sort of planted the seed, got him to start thinking about what careers he was suited to. Now, out of that report, which I think was about, I can't remember, 200 and something pages, some of the main roles that he likes and dislikes, his behaviours were suited to, were really blue-collar type roles. So riggers, scaffolders, farmhand, mobile plant operator, carpenter, what else was there? Formwork. Oh, there was just a lot of blue-collar roles. Anyhow, we've sent our two eldest to a school that offers vet training in year 11 and 12, because we know that they're probably not suited to university at this stage. They might do it in their 30s like their father did, but right now, that's not their pathway. So Jake went and did metal fabrication, and he was 2 out of 220 kids to get a Boilermaker apprenticeship with a particular company down in Bassendean, and they're well-renowned, brilliant company. He's been there now for a good 18 months and loves it, and he lives out of home and he's all tickety-boo and settled. And Tane is doing carpentry. So he tried, so at this particular school, there's electrotechnology, carpentry and boiler making. And electrotechnology was the first day, and he came home and said, Mum, I don't want to be an electrician. And I go, that's fine, darling, I get it. That's not your bag. The second day was carpentry, and he loved it. My dad was a carpenter. My brother's a carpenter. My grandfather was in building. All of my family are actually in building. It's only me that's been in mining, really. And then the third day was metal fabrication, and he knew that Jake was already heading down that path. So he was kind of like, oh, no, I don't really want to be a boilermaker. I think I want to be a carpenter. So today he's just finished his second last day of 2 weeks of working doing work experience. And like I said, he wants to be out of school at the end of this year, which was probably something that we didn't really want to take into consideration because I always wanted my kids to finish school. But he's bored shitless, and he's so excited to go to work experience. Like today, he did a full. He was there at 6, and we picked him up around 5:30 or something. So he's getting into the groove of what it's like to be out in the workforce, and he's probably more suited to that. So yeah, so it just gives people a bit of clarity around the types of different positions that they're suited. And we're talking everything from non-skilled right up to, master degrees and stuff like that. So it's a really interesting, a really interesting thing. And I'm a bit, I bang on about it a bit. Oh, hang on. Yeah, coming. Sorry. My dinner's ready.
Tea's ready. Ricky. Hello, yeah. Ricky. I was just going to say, I was all ready to do the big, now I know Ricky's cooking tea, so you'll have to know. Yeah, he is, and he just yelled out on cue. That's classic.
There's a reason.
Yeah,
there's a reason why I married a chef.
Yeah. Oh shit. Yeah. Awesome. Good idea. I'll leave a link to everywhere for you. But back to the Resources Hub, and if you Google the Resources Hub, if you don't get to the show notes, guys, you'll find it. But the show notes will be madmumsy.com/beers47. That's the number 47. And just in closing, I really would like to ask you, awesome lady that you are with 4 kids and everything that you're doing and everything that you've done, when life turns to shit and you're having a really bad time, really bad day, what do you do what's your special place that helps you through? Because I think it's important for us to all at least know where it is, and how often do we go there? Not necessarily a place. It can be in your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. We all have those days. For me, the last 5.5 years has been a pretty trying time. I set up a career development recruitment company in the worst downturn known to man. So I've had a lot of those. I've had a lot of those rocking in the corner kind of, in the fetal position moments. But I'm a pretty positive person at the best of times. I've been through a bit of shit in my life, and I'm grateful for every morning that I wake up, and I'm grateful for the fact that I've got a beautiful family and a amazing supportive network of friends, and I love what I do. I do what I love, and I love what I do, and that's my little motto. So, I got into work this morning at 6:30, and as you know, I didn't get home until 6 o'clock, and I'm still going, and I'll probably still be going. So I don't know. Through all the hard times, I think you've just got to find that little glimmer of hope. And if you're feeling like it's really getting too hard, reach out, because there's plenty of people that will support and love you no matter what situation you're in. And if there's anybody that knows that quite intimately, it's myself, so.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Dani Tamati. Is it Tamati or Tamati?
It's Tamati, actually.
Tamati. Oh, I wasn't even bloody close.
That's okay. Say it as it is.
Well, thank you so much for our half-hour chat. That ended up being an hour. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
I told you they all end up about an hour. And go and enjoy tea. And hi to Ricky. Thank you so much.
Thanks. I'll speak to you soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
I hope that you enjoyed this chat with Dani as much as I did. And all the links we discussed in this episode can be found at madmumsy.com/beers47. That's madmumsy with a Z or a Z, depending where you're from, and the number 47. Thanks so much for listening. I really do appreciate you. And please, if you're enjoying the podcast, share with your mates. Grab their phone, find their podcast app, and search for Beers with a Minor, and hit subscribe. And then they'll never miss an episode. Just like you've done, right? Yeah. Okay, off you go. There's also heaps of resources and lots of good stuff on the website to help newbies, wannabes, and us old-time miners. So again, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, stay safe, be real, be special, and have fun, for we only live once. Cheers. Oh, and there might be a couple of bloopers at the end of this if you keep listening. Well, why the hell not? Cheers. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. And we're carrying on. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Okay. Car going past. Have a drink. Of the Resources Hub, an award-winning high-profile recruitment career. It's such a mouthful. All these big words. Start again. Blooper at the end. All these people with all these highfalutin things that they do. I'm just a busted ass miner. That's easy to say.